A recent article on parents.com caught my attention. It was called What is Unschooling? Experts Explain the Pros and Cons. And first, I think it's interesting and really encouraging that a mainstream parenting publication is talking about unschooling at all. More parents are questioning whether the traditional school approach is actually the best fit for their children. They're looking for alternatives, and unschooling is becoming part of that conversation. The article shared several benefits of unschooling. It talked about removing the pressure of grades, creating education tailored to the child, and giving families more time together. All good things. But then it moved to the potential cons. The four concerns they listed were that it can be difficult to balance learning with free time, that parents might not remain involved enough in their child's education, that children could lack basic skills compared with their peers, and that without a school schedule, family life could become chaotic. Now, these are not unusual concerns. They're probably some of the same things you've worried about or friends and family have mentioned to you. But as I read through them, I realized that the problem goes deeper than whether these particular concerns are accurate. Because underneath all four of them is a very schoolish definition of learning. And if we evaluate unschooling while continuing to use the school's definition of learning, unschooling will almost always look risky. So let's start with that idea that parents need to balance learning time with free time. Sounds completely reasonable because most of us have divided children's lives that way for as long as we can remember. Learning happens during school. Free time happens after school. Learning involves books, assignments, grades, lessons, measurable skills. Free time involves games, bikes, friends, hobbies, screens, imaginations, and whatever else children choose to do. The article even described a concern that a child might ride their bike outside all day without once picking up a book. But that's the assumption we need to examine. Why is picking up a book automatically learning, while riding a bike is automatically not learning? What is the child doing on the bike? Are they developing coordination, assessing risks, exploring the neighborhood, getting a feel for the geography, the maps, the incline, the terrain, experimenting with speed and balance, solving problems, meeting other kids, imagining an entire story while they ride? And why are we assuming that the time spent riding a bike has taken something away from education? That division between learning and free time didn't come from observing how humans naturally learn. It came from school, and it takes time to unpack that. It takes time to remember that our most meaningful learning rarely happened because someone divided the day into subjects and handed us a checklist. The article also raises the concern that unschooled children might not spend enough time practicing fundamental skills or learning subjects that they don't particularly enjoy. Again, I understand why parents worry about this, but making children study subjects they don't like doesn't necessarily make them proficient in those subjects. They may learn enough to pass a test. They might be able to rattle off facts and dates. But how much of that information is retained once the test is over? And what did they have to abandon so that they could complete the assigned work? Maybe they were knee-deep in creativity. Maybe they were trying to solve a problem that mattered to them. Maybe one question was leading to another and then another. That rambling nature of curiosity can look inefficient when you compare it to a curriculum checklist. But haven't we all been deeply absorbed in something only to be interrupted and then find it nearly impossible to return to the place where we were? We're so focused on what children might miss if they don't follow the curriculum that we rarely ask what they miss when we interrupt the learning already happening. The experts in the article appear to begin with the assumption that there is a predetermined body of knowledge that all children need, and then the adult's job becomes making sure the children acquire it, even when they don't see a reason for learning it. But I think that puts the cart before the horse. School begins with the information and tries to move the child toward it. Unschooling begins with the learner and helps them reach the information and skills they need. That doesn't mean unschoolers never do anything difficult or repetitive or mundane. It means they have a meaningful reason to get to the other side. When a child needs a particular skill to create something, understand something, participate in something, or move toward a goal that they care about, that need becomes the catalyst. It can propel them through the frustrating parts in a way that you might need this someday simply cannot. Can we all feel the collective eye roll of children everywhere when they hear that? And didn't many of us do the same thing? If I ever truly need to understand the Monroe Doctrine, I can find a 3-minute video to explain it. Our children have the same access to that information, and so much more than we ever did. The world of learning has changed. Information is no longer scarce. It doesn't need to be delivered years in advance in case the child might need it later. What children need is room for their curiosity, confidence, critical thinking, access to resources, and the ability to find and use the information when it becomes relevant. So that brings us to the parent's role. Because the article is absolutely right about one thing. Unschooling requires involved parents. But involvement doesn't have to mean assigning and teaching and monitoring and testing. Most of us were trained to be deputized school officials. We got children out the door in the morning, prepared for school. We picked them up later, squeezed in some school-arranged extracurriculars, dinner, homework, and bedtime. Then we got up and did it all again. Even as parents, we learned to live for the weekend because school had essentially confiscated the other 5 days of the week. When we remove school, we have to rethink our role. And this is actually the part parents struggle with the most. Understanding the idea of unschooling is one thing. Knowing what to do on Monday morning when there's no curriculum telling you what comes next, that's something else. So that's why I created Unschooling 101. And because math is often the place where all these old assumptions come rushing back, I created Learning Math Without Curriculum. Both are designed to help parents make this shift in real family life. They're part of my July special through the end of this month. I'll leave information in the show notes for you. But what does this new parenting role actually look like? How do we connect with our children throughout the day? How do we create a daily life with them? How do we share our own experiences without turning every conversation into a lesson? How do we know them well enough to recognize the entry points instead of applying a checklist based on their birth year? That's the work of unschooling. It isn't passive, and it certainly isn't uninvolved. It asks us to pay closer attention to the learner standing in front of us. And this is also why I've really started thinking of unschooling as modern homeschooling. The traditional system was built for a different time. Classrooms, lectures, standardized curriculum, age-based progression made more sense when information was difficult to access and one adult needed to deliver it to a large group of children. But the world changed. Our opportunities to learn changed. The system simply didn't keep up. How exciting that we can release our children from that antiquated experience and step into the light. We don't have to balance learning against life. We can build a family life in which learning and life all weaves together naturally because they were never separate in the first place. And if you're listening to this and thinking, I understand the idea, Sue, but I don't know how to do it. That's what that Unschooling Starter Bundle can help you with. Unschooling 101 will help you walk away from the school version of learning and understand what your role looks like now, what the days will look like. And the math course takes one of the subjects parents worry about the most, find the hardest to release, and helps you recognize how mathematical thinking actually develops throughout real life. So for just a couple more days, you can get both of these courses bundled together for $99. I'll leave a link in the show notes. I just don't want you wasting energy spending August trying to duplicate school at home because you aren't sure what else to do. I want to help you turn toward your family for the answers. Recognize that learning is already happening there and begin building out a life that fits the actual people living it. Your children deserve something better than the school's antiquated version of learning. The deepest shift in unschooling isn't deciding which subjects to teach or how many hours to spend learning each day. It's realizing that your child's life isn't getting in the way of education. Their life is where their education is happening. You just may need a little help noticing it. So reach out if you have any questions, and we'll talk again soon.